So this is a map that's prepared for us by an Israeli organization. The Israeli organization name is BIMCOM. BIMCOM specializes in zoning and planning rights. Okay? Because we have to remember that those some 250 blue dots that you saw sprinkled across the West Bank, they didn't just pop up like mushrooms after a rain. Right? There's a lot of intentional planning that went into that. And as a result of that intentional planning and process through the system of government, right, there's paperwork and there's data. So this Israeli organization, through the Israeli equivalent of the Freedom of Information Act, is able to get a hold of this data and a hold of the maps and make it public. Okay? So it's important for you to know where this map came from. You can see down here, it's financed by Oxfam and the Belgian government. That's where the money for this organization comes from. But on this map, okay, you see here in the blue where that Israeli settlement of Carmel is. That settlement was put on this land in the 1980s. What Motassem had said is that his family had purchased this land in the 60s. They purchased it in 1964. So the outline of this orange here, that's the Israeli government acknowledging where the boundaries of that land is. Okay? Because this land is not about a dispute over land necessarily. Right? That's not why, that's the dispute of whether al-Khair owns their property or not is not a part of the conversation. But what you see here, this blue striped outline, that's the way in which that Israeli settlement is set to expand. When that settlement expands that much, it's going to take away all of the historical grazing land of that community. They will no longer be able to shepherd their livestock as a means to sustain their community. So I have another map, also produced by BIMCOM. So again, the Israeli Civil Administration issues a home demolition order. Those home demolition orders are put into a system, right? Because you have to keep track of which Palestinian homes you have to destroy and which ones you don't, right? There's record keeping along all of this. So what this map shows here is all of the home demolitions in al-Khair that are ready to be executed. You see a lot of red dots there. There are some 152 demolition orders pending in that community. Or in other words, all but 2 homes are set to be demolished. Okay? So, what Motassem said in the video is that every day we should wake up and expect a home demolition. Right? Just since 2011, 9 different times, the Israeli military has come in and demolished these homes. If you go into Google and you Google al-Khair home demolition, you'll see a litany of YouTube videos, right, of all the different times the people of al-Khair have made sure to run out with their cameras and document what is going on in the hopes that the world will be able to see their pain and maybe act out on it, and for us to do something in a tangible way. And so what Motassem means by that is that there's such a randomness in these home demolition orders. Okay? You saw the aerial footage of what that community looks like. And you see all of those homes still standing today in that video. Right? And so this community doesn't know when their homes will actually be destroyed. If the Israeli military gives you a demolition order, they could demolish your home the next day, or a week later, or 6 months later, or a year later, or 3 years later. There's such a randomness to those home demolition orders. It creates a situation in that community where they no longer know how to plan their lives from day to day. Right? If you know your home is going to get ready to be demolished tomorrow, you act completely differently as opposed to if you know that your home will be demolished 5 years later. Right? My buddy Tarek, who lives in this community, he's a good boy. he's going to school for English. And the reason why he's going to school for English is because he wants to ensure that all of the little kids in his community can speak English so they can share their stories to the international community. Right? He's not going for money. Right? He's going to develop a skill that will help with his ability to carry on non-violently. Okay? We'll toss him here. You know, same thing. This is a Bedouin shepherd that lives in the middle of nowhere. He intentionally learns how to speak English so he can share these stories. Right? So he can also resist non-violently. Right? To resist non-violently simply isn't an emotional state. It's the development of a particular set of skills. Sometimes language is a part of that. Okay? So Tarek's going to school to be an English teacher, to teach in his community. This past semester, as the exams were nearing, Tarek has all of these different stressors going on. And he comes to me and he goes, Cody, you know what? I just want the Israeli military to come demolish my home tomorrow. I want them to come demolish my home tomorrow. You think about that. This Israeli occupation has created a state in which people are living on this land wishing that their own home would be demolished. And Tarek knows what that home demolition is like. Just in the past few years, there's been 25 different homes and structures demolished, displacing some 152 people, over 100 of which are children. Right? So when Tarek says, I want my home to be demolished, he also knows the implications of that. Okay? And so, what we're doing in this community is this. We recognize that in order to help this community stay on their land, that we have to invest tangibly, okay? But in a way that empowers this community as well, right? To create projects in which they can have ownership over and make their own decisions. So one of the things that this community has asked for us to install beehives. Thank God that honey seems to be universally expensive, right? So they're able to, get this honey, sell it at a decent rate in the market and be able to generate some income like that. And again, you're asking these people, after generations of being shepherders and herders, to change their entire skill set in order to remain on their land. Can you imagine if someone came up to you today and said, I want you to forget about your accounting job that you've been doing for the last 20 years, and now I want you to be a pianist down at the Catholic Church? What? That's a tall order, but we're asking this Palestinian community to do that. Okay? We've also put in a greenhouse. The money to get for this greenhouse was not easy. Okay? I had to write a grant for $7,000 to get these greenhouses. That's the easy part, right? You can create a very compelling reason why to finance this greenhouse. Okay? I have just laid out a very compelling story of why this community needs this project to generate income. Okay? It's very hard to find people to finance it because we say that this greenhouse is going to get built illegally. Because we are engaged in nonviolent resistance. And what that means is that we refuse to apply for a building permit for this greenhouse. There are very few organizations that are willing to make that distinction, that sometimes if things are illegal, all right, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are a bad thing. But we found an organization. We explained to them, these are the dynamics. Will you fund us anyways? Right? So we need to have people think about what is the difference between what is legal and what is moral. And there's not a lot of organizations, churches, or individuals that think within inside of this framework. Right? It took a lot of digging around to make sure that we could live into our principles in order to build this greenhouse. So the economic component is just one element of how we're trying to contribute to this community. It's not the most important. The most important project that we have going in this community is the political one. Okay? So what we've done is that we've created a series of political tours of taking people from across Israel, across the West Bank, anybody who we think that we can talk into hopping in the car with us, paying us a few bucks to listen to this community story. Right? So we do these tours of this community. We're able to charge a nominal fund for Tarek and Motasim and these other people to share their story. You know, we charge a little bit for their lunch. Okay? But the important component of this is that we ask people to engage in political advocacy. Right? We ask people to engage their local institutions, their politicians, and say, hey, these are the steps that we want you to take to make sure that these homes are not demolished. Because Motasim, Tarek, the little island boy that you saw up on the screen, they don't necessarily need more money. They don't need another greenhouse. They don't need beehives. What they need is for us to change the unjust laws into just laws. They don't need a home. They just need the laws changed, which doesn't allow them to build a home. Right? The injustice in this land does not come from people because people are different religions. You have communities here in the United States in which you have Christians and Muslims and Jews and atheists and whatever else there is out there, all living in these smally condensed spots, and they all get along to various degrees. Okay? Why? Because there's an equitable distribution of the law. Our law here does not discriminate based on religion or your ethnicity, right? The laws in Israel does. Anybody who is a non-Jew is discriminated against. Myself, as not being a Jew, I will never have the full rights as my son. I will never have the full rights of my son unless this system there changes. That's important to know. Okay? So we're asking people to engage. And one of the ways in which we ask people to engage is through being political, being engaged. You know, and that's difficult because a lot of people don't want to hear the word, politics or being political. And it comes to the point where we have to reclaim the meaning of that word. To be political does not mean necessarily, something bad. It means that you are engaged in a process in which you are looking for ways to make your society just and moral. That's what being political means. You're engaged in the social arrangement of your community. Now, I always tell people, hey, look, yes, I need thoughts and prayers. And yes, I need your money. But I need you to be active in that way. So one of the things that we advocate for is for people to be engaged in what we call boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Right? And when we think about boycott, that means that we're not buying things, okay, which contribute to the military occupation. Or we're not buying things from corporations or business that does business inside of Israel. And there's a lot of products that we have access to. One of these is Remax, the realty firm. Remax does business and it helps to get people into those Israeli settlements. There might be people here in this room who have their house listed with Remax right now. That's one thing that you can do as an individual to make sure that you're not contributing to this military occupation. Because every dime matters. That's the way that you can be responsible individually. There's other corporations as well. Hewlett-Packard. Some of us might have Hewlett-Packard printers. Right? There's different brands of hummus and dates and et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of things on the internet that as an individual you can see, don't buy. All right? But there's larger projects out there that you probably want to buy as an individual. Right? A lot of these excavators that bulldoze Palestinian homes over, they're built by Caterpillar.